Good morning, my dear students. Today we are going to study about this art of story writing. As we all have read stories in our English books, we always come across so many different stories, so many interesting stories. Now, in this session, we are also going to write stories on our own. It's a very important question of our examination. In question paper, we get this question for 10 marks. So it's a very important topic on which we have to focus. So we will be able to get 10 on 10 in this part. So first of all, when we talk about story writing, according to the CBSE pattern, it the marks distribution is title 1 mark, content 4 mark, expression 5 marks. The expression includes coherence and relevance of ideas, which is of 2.5 marks, and accuracy, appropriate words, and correct spellings is of 2.5 marks. And the moral also should be there as it is an important part of our story. So, title and moral is a must while writing a story. Now, what is a story writing? A story writing is a work of fiction or imagination that is usually written in easily understandable grammatical structure with natural flow of speech. It should be as direct and brief as possible. Otherwise, you will be able to write an effective story. Story writing has 5 key elements. First is character, second is setting, third is plot, fourth is conflict, and fifth is theme. Now, moving on, we will discuss in our session. So, first of all, the most important thing is spins around only. A character is someone or something that takes part in actions depicted in the short story. It could be a living person, a dead person, a ghost, an imaginary character, a robot, a dog, a toy, etc. A story writing would more effectively convey its meaning if it has very few characters, one protagonist, one other main character, and no characters would be idle. So we have to keep in mind that we should have less number of characters in our story. Then after character is setting. Setting of a story constitutes time frame and place. The setting is often decorated with descriptions of scenes such as supermarket, bedroom, crowded metro station, or drizzling evening. Again, unlimited list could be there. These descriptions are very important to make to weeks to years, but a setting of few hours more effective than with setting of few months or years. So, as we have said that we should have less number of characters, in the same way, setting should also be very short time, otherwise it will be vague or you will not be able to complete your story in time. Then third important element is plot. Plot is flesh and muscle of a story writing. It comprises events and characters' action. More creatively you describe and logically connect events and actions, stronger the plot would be. And stronger the plot you create, better interest would it generate among readers. A plot has a start, body, and end that are linked sequentially by events and characters' action. Or we can say the whole story is delivered through this plot only. We develop our story in this plot, our story in this plot only. Or the setting or the theme. Everything comes under plot only. The next is conflict, climax, and resolution. Actually, conflict only, because when only we will able to meet our climax and resolution. So, what is conflict is? Conflict is starting to the story. It creates confusion or question in reader's mind by first line of the story. Your reader must try to get answer from breast of her ability and experience, but she should finally end up digging into subsequent lines of your stories to quench her temporarily aroused inquisitive by the climax. This is where, or this is where the story or where the problem or conflict is resolved in one way or another. The climax is a story. After climax, where the entire plot is wrapped up and there is a sense of closure of for the reader. So this resolution is also a story. Next is theme. Central idea or main belief presented by story writing is called theme. It is a skeleton or frame of your short story that is decorated by plot, setting, conflict, and characters. Now, the language of a story. Be very understandable. So, what are the things we should keep in mind while writing a story? As a story writing involves creative writing skills, so we have to follow the mentioned points for writing a good story. First of all, we should keep in mind that the narrative should be in first or second or third person. Setting of the story should be made on time, location, context, atmosphere should be described to create imagery. Then meaningful dialogues to be used. Dialogue should have expressions. Then characterization, identify 2 to 3 main characters in the story as we have mentioned. Then plot of the story should be interesting but short because the word limit should not be exceeded. Now, next is what are the things which we can include in a plot? We can include what happens, storyline, action, flashback, climax and conflict and tension, resolving a conflict, balance between opposing forces of the conflict, mystery, empowerment, crisis or climax, turning point of the story, resolution or solution to the conflict. All these things will enhance your language of the story and your story more interesting, and it will get good marks for you. Next is the plot diagram. As we have discussed earlier, that every story has a rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. As in these 5 elements, we have discussed this, so we can easily understand all those plot diagram, and every story have this elements in it. Otherwise, story starts. It starts with the beginning, then it is followed by rising action, then comes the climax, then falling action, and resolution is the end of the story where our interesting story ends. Then comes the example. Let's take an example of Romeo Juliet, which is an interesting love story, and we can assess how, in such a big story, all these elements are incorporated by the writers. So, first of all, in the beginning, Romeo and Juliet's families are enemies, but Romeo and Juliet meet at a park each other. That is the big. Romeo visits Juliet on a balcony one night and then she sends a message to him through her nurse. They meet and secretly wed without their family's knowledge. Romeo is Juliet's cousin Tybalt and he is exiled. Juliet's father. Juliet fakes her death, sending a message to Romeo to let him know, but he hears of her death and doesn't get the message. Then comes the climax, which is a very interesting part of the story. That, as we have read earlier that in Rising Action, only Juliet only fakes that she has died, but Romeo gets the news that she died. So, what is the climax of the story? Climax is Romeo kills herself when her sleep, sees him and kills herself. Now comes the following action. This mourned Romeo and Juliet. Now, the resolution or the ending of our story is Romeo and Juliet's death have ended their family's future. So, we can see that in this story, the beginning was there, then the rising action takes place, and the climax is where we are understand what is going to happen next. And in following action, now the resolution is near. So when the resolution comes, we know that the story is going to end. Now, as we have discussed, the plot is throughout the story. The characters of the story are Romeo and Juliet. Those are the protagonists around whom the story is conflict. What is the conflict in the story? That Romeo and Juliet's conflict with their family, and they are not allowed to meet each other. Is the setting. Then setting is Romeo and Juliet is set in Verona, Italy, and then the theme of the Romeo and Juliet is not just about love. You could say the love overcomes hate.